I'm treating people at a point of admissions where I'm allocating a benefit. Don't do that in a racially preferential way. Okay. I mean, I've been saying that for 30 years. Another thing is, I've got a kid that's coming into my care who has a package of identity that's with them. I'm going to ignore that? That is throwing out the baby with the bathwater. That is a bait and switch. It's a bait and switch. We started talking about we didn't like racial preferences. We ended talking about we don't like race at all.
If we are, in fact, seeing the end of what I call, I was beginning to talk about this, DEI, because so many of the programs that have been canceled so far have been DEI or LGBTQ focused, and that has been a firm sort of justification by the Trump administration. But we've seen affirmative action challenged for more than a decade now in the courts. If we are at the end of what we call DEI, affirmative action, efforts at inclusivity, even in research programs, what are the benchmarks that we might use to assess whether affirmative action was a success or a failure?
Yeah, let me take an opening crack at that. So my line of attack on the question is to distinguish between affirmative action struck down by the Supreme Court in its famous decision of 2023, finding that the use of racial preferences in admissions practices by public universities is in conflict with the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, and by private universities violates titles of congressional statutes that have been signed into law, is one thing. DEI, which I'm not going to attempt to give a comprehensive definition of, but I mean attention to the identitarian interest and demands and needs of a student body, which is composed of people of varied racial and ethnic and religious and so on, and making an environment that cultivates a commodious reception and nurture of such people on the identitarian dimensions is another. Those are not the same things. The Supreme Court did not say that it is somehow against the American legal order to be concerned about the identities that people bring when they come into our environment. The decision to disattend them is a different matter altogether than constitutional entitlement. What I'm saying is, I'm treating people at a point of admissions where I'm allocating a benefit. Don't do that in a racially preferential way. Okay. I mean, I've been saying that for 30 years. Another thing is, I've got a kid that's coming into my care who has a package of identity that's with them. I'm going to ignore that? That is throwing out the baby with the bathwater. That is a bait and switch. It's a bait and switch. We started talking about we didn't like racial preferences. We ended talking about we don't like race at all. That second position hasn't been argued for. Do you understand what I'm saying? Don't let these people resolve the ancient primordial question of American justice by the back of their hand to affirmative action. Don't let them take race off the table without an argument.
Which they couldn't make, is the point.
Well,
And
that's
so-
my position.
Yes, and therefore I would agree with what you're saying, which is that the way DEI does things, the whole conception of what inclusion is, the whole conception of how you reach equity, is a kind of performance art that I think too many people have been allowed to now professionalize, especially for the past 10 years. Again, I don't think of them as evil people. I do terrible things too that I'm not aware of. I know that all of them think that they are doing good. They should not be thought of as evil people. But what they're doing is not based on any sophisticated conception of social justice, of real equity. It fetishizes identity to a point that doesn't make any kind of logical sense. And so the idea is to get rid of those excesses while not allowing people whose basic idea is, let's not stir up any of that race stuff, as if racism doesn't exist, as if race and identity are complete fictions, which they aren't, although some people would wish that they were. If they're ever going to be, it's not going to be for many generations from now. So I would agree. I would agree with what you're saying. There is no argument they could make that we're going to eliminate race completely. It's just an Archie Bunker, go a little further up, Al Bundy, who would it be now? Nobody, Peter Griffin. If you had a conversation with Peter Griffin on Family Guy, we're near there about race. The sort of thing he would say about how we need to stop stirring that stuff up and Cleveland will get angry. That is what we need to ignore, because Peter I shouldn't use him, but that person, Donald Trump, could not make that argument. There is no coherent argument there because we live in this world.
Yeah, too much agreement.